We are warriors of Tsushima. We are samurai!
Ghost of Tsushima remains one of the coolest games of all time, and it's about to drop on the PC. Whether you're a new player or want a fresh reminder, I compiled all of the biggest and up-to-date tips and tricks to set yourself up pretty much for the perfect start. At number 1, the guiding wind is one of your biggest friends. It's this ability to summon a literal gust of wind which will visually direct you to your next objective marker. So it's both unique, minimizes your time spent in map menus while massively boosting up your immersion. And later on you can even upgrade this to make it easier to discover other points of interest like cosmetics, health and resolve upgrades, creature shrines and so on. And you can pick these, by the way, from the map screen side menu once unlocked, and they typically do a very good job to guide you to the nearest point possible. However, pay attention to the dotted line that appears on the map, as that can be a very good indicator of how far your objective is. So in this case, the typical dotted line interrupts almost halfway through, so however long it is, you will need to travel twice that distance to reach your destination. It doesn't matter if it's a very short or a very long line. However, like I said, the game is filled with visual cues to minimize entering UI menus. So black smoke is something that you will see typically indicating enemy camps, both small and large, while white smoke will indicate side quests and NPCs you want to talk with. Also, talking NPCs that you find in various towns and camps that have chat bubbles over their heads are something you will want to talk to because they will reveal other side quests around the map. At number 2, let's talk about standoffs, one of my favorite features in this game. It's basically a one versus all challenge that you can do against any group of enemies, assuming you pull it off before entering combat. And this is actually a great way to wipe out entire camps of enemies if built properly. But there's one single tip that you have to keep in mind to be 100% successful, and that is pay attention to your enemy's feet. So usually they will try to fake attacks in an attempt to lure you in, but you just want to hold steady and not release that button just yet. Instead, wait until they actually lift their feet and you see movement, and then unleash your attack, which is going to immediately strike them down. And as I've said, if you build this properly, you can strike down up to like 5, even 7 enemies, which is basically half, sometimes even more, of an entire camp. At number 3, go ahead and immediately change this setting if it's already turned off, and that is going to be right here in the options menu /gameplay. Go ahead and enable armor loadouts. At least on the PlayStation 5, for some reason this is off by default, but if you turn it on, you will now be able to basically have loadouts for each specific armor set. And this can be of tremendous help if you want to play in different play styles but change them often, like going between samurai or ghost builds, or even more so if you have a proper charm loadout and don't want to forget about it. You can just set it like that and have it saved over there permanently, or at least until you make another change to overwrite it. Plus, this also takes into account any face/bandana that you might have, plus of course any cosmetics you applied to your weapons, so it saves those as well. At number 4, let's talk about stances and stance switching. This is one of the coolest things about Ghost of Tsushima, and that is that you have a different stance for different types of enemies, plus each one of them has different upgrades and cool attacks that can apply in different situations. So to unlock all of the stance fast, here's what you're going to want to do. Initially, you will want to pay attention to any enemy encampment, especially ones that list stance progress in their reward section, because inside of them you will typically find some of these leaders, and if you defeat or study them, they will give you 1 point progress towards your next stance. However, you can actually get 2 of those at the same time by first studying that leader and only then defeating them. Make sure you do them in this order and you're gonna get 2 points per each leader, which is going to make stance unlocking that much easier. But like I said, stances are amazing. We're going to talk about them in just a bit, as well as my favorite early unlocks. In the meantime, let's talk about some of the best skills to invest points into early. And this brings us to number 5, the best early techniques to grab. Of course, you can follow your own path. However, these are the ones that I found to be most efficient. So in the samurai skill line, go ahead and immediately unlock that perfect parry as well as the dodge roll. Perfect parry is this amazing way. If you pull it off at the right moment, you can do this slow motion, immediately break to the enemy's defense, and if you follow up with a attack, that's going to do a counter, which typically one-shots enemies even on like the higher difficulties. Plus it gives you a bunch of resolve, and later on you can even upgrade that to give you a lot more HP. Meanwhile, dodge roll is amazing because it's also a gap closing ability, if you can believe that. And you can also use this, by the way, in stealth mode. When you're sneaking around, it's much faster to dodge roll towards your enemy and they will still not hear you coming. So it can be very good if you're paying attention to enemy patrol routes. From this point on, I would go ahead and switch to ghost weapons, especially as my legend level increases. So the first thing I would recommend doing is to unlock assassination from one of the first missions, but then also go for these 3 upgrades right here for the final chain assassination master. So this will now let you assassinate up to 3 targets, 4 actually if you get a later on charm in the game. But that's still going to be enough to one-shot almost any enemy. There's only one that can resist one-shots like these, but that's gonna get fixed by the main story once you progress enough into it. And early in the game, there are plenty of big groups of enemies. This is going to make it much easier for you to deal with them. And from this point on, I would invest the next points into my stances, specifically water and the wind stance right here in the middle, which is going to help us deal a lot better with shielded and spear enemies. You can also go with 1 point into puncture first into the starting stone stance. That's actually a very strong ability which you can use against enemies with low defenses or when anticipating incoming attacks. They will essentially get one shot stabbed with an ability like this. But I really love the downpour you get in the water stance. It's not just great at breaking shields, but it's also one of the best ways to apply any status effect or on attack or hit effect from your charms. So let's say, for example, you go with double damage charms or go with poison or anything that applies on hit effects. This is going to have a much higher chance to trigger as you're doing a very long and fast flurry of attacks. And of course, you can also go with some of the others, like, for example, I really like the Spear Defense Wind ability right here, which makes you automatically parry when you attack during an enemy's own attack with the spear. This can help you a ton when you get overwhelmed by enemies. The only other skill I would recommend here is the Ghost Weapon Smoke Bomb, as well as its first upgrade, which will also blind enemies. So if you pull these off, you can just throw a smoke bomb and you can follow up with a chain assassination. This actually works very well coupled with the chain assassination from earlier. At number 6, let's talk about a few farming methods that you want to do early, especially since you will need to upgrade your gear. And one that still works in 2024, surprisingly, is the Rushing Water Crossing. However, it works slightly different than before. So this is only good for farming a ton of those predator hides, because this place still spawns 2 bear attacks, and usually the enemies inside of this camp will take care of the bears for you. So each one of them provides 4 to 5 of those predator hides, which is going to be very helpful if you want to upgrade, of course, all of your stuff at the trapper and whatnot. And you can actually reset that spawn very easily by just making sure you leave off at least 1 enemy alive in the camp. It doesn't matter if it's the leader or any of the other ads, just leave one, teleport to the nearby Inari shrine, and then you can make your way back to the camp, and behold, they will spawn yet again. Unfortunately, all the other grabbables like the chest and the materials on the ground will not respawn like how they did prior to the patch in 2020. Oh, and by the way, whenever you're farming some of these enemy camps, especially the larger ones like the logging camp, make absolutely sure that you collect everything inside of the smaller Mongol huts, because if you light up that fire and destroy the bases, they will also get destroyed, including the items inside. So first, make sure you collect everything inside each and every single one of them, grab all of the resources and materials, and then go ahead and destroy it. And once you do so, you will also gain a bunch of extra resources in the middle of whatever that camp might be, but you will notice that those huts are now completely gone. Now at number 7, we're gonna flash forward a little bit, and once you finish the main story, at least once, you're gonna get the replay mechanic. So you can now replay through any encampment, stronghold, or any other type of enemy camp that you might have completed before. It's only going to spawn the enemies inside, not the resources, so anything you collected before is now going to be gone. However, this is going to give you plenty of chances to test out new builds, to maybe try out higher difficulties, or just have a lot more fun. Many of these camps are really well made, and you're gonna have a ton of fun to take down the large groups of enemies inside, especially on the more larger scale ones. But once you do finish the main story, you also open up New Game Plus mode, and this is where the game truly shines. You will gain a bunch of new items, especially charms that will actually make some of the best builds even more amazing. First things first, you're going to unlock higher variants of the same difficulties, so you will now have plus variants of them, which makes them slightly more challenging. The second thing is that you're going to unlock a new vendor NPC called Baku the Voiceless right here on the island at the very start of the game. So he is going to sell a bunch of new cosmetics, many of them actually really awesome, like Ryuzo's armor, also Ishikawa's armor are here, plus a bunch of other dyes in there that are really awesome. However, you also gain some very strong charms, like the one of Blazing Flame, which you can then combine with the Steadfast Fire from the same NPC and basically make the Way of the Flame extremely overpowered, like completely unleashing fire upon entire groups of enemies and deal a lot more damage, plus it lasts a lot longer. Very awesome, especially for something like the Kensei armor. But you can also get the Heavenly Rebuke charm, and this is going to be a little bit more RNG if you want to play like that, and call forth lightning strikes randomly when you perform the Heavenly Strike attack. But there are other options, including ones that can make the game a lot more challenging to you and make, for example, abilities cost a lot more resolve and whatnot. Now, all of this will now cost Ghost Flowers, which is a currency exclusive to New Game Plus, and basically any side mission or thing you collected before New Game Plus, instead of giving you that reward again, will now give you a Ghost Flower instead, anywhere between 1 to 5 depending on the type you collect. And this is why I recommend finishing off as much as possible before going into New Game Plus, maybe even going for 100% completion on your first playthrough, so that everything that you do in New Game Plus will now give you Ghost Flowers instead. As I've said, even the collectibles will give you that instead of the former rewards they had in the previous playthrough. Additionally, armors also gain another level of upgrade, which can make some of them extremely overpowered, more so than before. Like, for example, Tadayori can gain a massive knocking and reload speed bump at the max level. You also get something like, for example, the Gosaku armor, which is going to give you a colossal and a massive boost to that health and stagger damage. This was already a top tier one, and there's plenty of other examples in there. Even the Sakai clan and others will gain some massive boosts, but of course you're gonna need to regain all of those resources once again. That is why at number 8, the other thing I wanted to cover is, of course, the Iki Island expansion. This makes the game so much more amazing. It's a whole new area that you can unlock as soon as you hit chapter 2. So once you go to Toyotama, you're gonna have this slight mission plus boat right here on the side of the starting castle, which is going to bring you to the Iki Island zone. So this is actually going to have its own mechanics. First of all, it introduces a new class of enemies called the Shaman, which is going to be extremely strong, and actually you're going to want to take these down as a priority. Otherwise, they will buff everybody in the party, so they will be almost impossible to defeat. But they introduce new mechanics and abilities too. So for example, your companion horse will get a charge mechanic, which is actually extremely strong and useful. But you also gain a bunch of exclusive items, which are some of the strongest in the game. So one of them is the Sarugami armor, and you actually get this from the legend of Black Hand Riku, which you will start as a mythical tale also in this part of the Iki Island. Very worth it. Right now it's always been the strongest in the game, and it brings some unique mechanics to your dodge and perfect parries. And speaking of legendary armors, your horse also gets one for the first time via the mythical tale called The Legacy of Kazumasa Sakai. So this is actually going to bring some intense bonuses right here. You're going to be much harder to knock off your mount. Your charge attacks can also replenish your resolve, so you can charge even more. Plus you can deal tons of damage once you upgrade this fully, so very worth it. There are plenty more very strong items, like for example, you can do the Hidden Cove challenges over at Funes Refuge, and once you complete those one-on-one duels, you're gonna get the Charm of Versatile skills, by far the strongest in the entire game, because this doubles the effect of all your minor charms as long as you only use one of each category. So not only do you save on the charm slots, as you don't have to double them anymore, you can actually use extra ones and also double their effects. This is why this is the strongest. But there's others that you get from the various sanctuaries for different creatures on Iki Islands. For example, the ones for the monkeys that you save will give you the charm of Mashira's protection. This actually enlarges that perfect parry and perfect dodge window when you heal, which is part of the Sarogami build. This is what makes it so incredibly OP as well. If you go for the ones for the deer, you get the charm of Sugaru's sight, which is going to let you shoot 3 arrows at the same time with the bows. Actually an incredible part of the best Tadayori build out there. And if you go for the feline ones, you're gonna get the charm of Nekoma's Hunt, which is going to let you actually throw a kunai during chain assassination. This is how you're gonna gain that 4th assassination kill. But there's plenty more in there, plenty of course, secret armors and secret skins, including like God of War and whatnot, so totally worth it. There's a bunch of videos on my channel anyway regarding Iki Island, so you can check the ones that I covered when that DLC launched. And of course, finally, how could we forget the Legends mode of Ghost of Tsushima, the multiplayer mode. This is something that you're going to absolutely love. So rules are completely different over here. First of all, you're going to have 4 different classes to choose between, including Ronin, Assassin, Samurai, as well as the Archer, all playing differently, of course, with the same mechanics from the base game. However, many things have changed. So you will see that the loot system is completely different. It's now in a tiered system, so it goes up to legendary and eventually even cursed items, which come with very strong effects. Some of them actually have multiple strong effects that you normally get from different mechanics that you can't really combine in the normal playthrough, but you can totally do it here. And you even gain additional new mechanics and abilities that weren't possible in the base version of the game. So this is something that's going to require a lot of team play. You will need to actually learn how to play the game properly, which is why I suggest taking this slowly. Right now, Legends mode on PlayStation 5 has a lot of players who actually don't really know what they're doing, mainly because there used to be an exploit that kinda let them jump a bunch of levels, so they ended up in Nightmare mode without knowing basic mechanics. But yeah, longer video guide is going to follow up on that, as well as it's going to be quite packed with information, and we're unfortunately kind of reaching the end of this one. But yeah, this is pretty much it with Ghost of Tsushima PC release. Let me know down below if you're excited for this one. I totally am, so I'm definitely going to jump into it, play some Legends mode, and maybe jump into that single player campaign too, but it's probably going to be mostly just the Legends mode. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.